Right, good afternoon, guys. So I'm about to start my webinar for the second session. The topic is the how to be a great technical presenter. Right, stay tuned. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's already 3:05, so I will start the webinar very soon now. So again, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate all your interest to attend this webinar regarding technical presentation. Right. So a little bit information before I start. Um, I will mute all the microphone and I will turn off all the videos for all the participants just to make sure the webinar goes smoothly without any feedback, sound feedback, or without any delay in internet connection. Okay. And I advise you guys to use laptop or PC to access this webinar instead of using a handphone, just to have a clear display from the slide, right? Because there are a lot of useful information from the slide itself. And if you have questions, you can just type in the chat box. Okay, I will answer it maybe during the presentation itself or after the presentation finished during the question and answer session. Okay? And if I cannot address all the questions live, I will respond afterwards via email. I have all your emails already, so just ask me. Okay, and I plan to upload the video recording to my Facebook page and also probably my on the YouTube channel. So I just need to create my own YouTube channel. And for any additional information, feel free to email me on this email below here. I'm arekrishna@gmail.com. So let me start. So the topic for today, this particular presentation, is how to be a great technical presenter. Why I'm focusing on technical presentation? Because there are a lot of training or seminar outside to be on a public speaking, right? Public speaking skill, presentation skill, but very few of them offer a training or a guide how to be a presenter in a technical way. So people like geologists, engineers, scientists, right? We all need a different kind of approach to handle a presentation. It's different with general public speaking skill. Even though the principle is the same, but we need more of a different approach. So this webinar itself will be divided into four main sections, right? The four main section, I will start with introduction, and the four main section will be the first one, why it's important, why effective presentation is important. The second, I will continue on the how to be a great presenter. So as a person, how you can improve your skill to be a great presenter. And then continue with the third one is how to prepare for the presentation itself. Most of us technical people, we spend a lot of time in preparing the presentation itself. So how to have a better preparation. And then at the end, how to deliver the presentation itself. Can you imagine you prepare maybe 1 week, 2 weeks for a presentation, which only take maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour. So what's the tips and trick to deliver the most effective presentation? So some people might argue, right? So they say um, people are born with the talent to be a great speaker, right? But I would argue, I would say everyone can be trained to be a great speaker, right? Even all of these famous leader, right? Barack Obama, Sukarno, our Indonesian president, right? Nelson Mandela, Steve Jobs. I think they are trained to be a great presenter. Obama was born as an introvert, Steve Jobs as well. Right? So mostly people associate introverts that people cannot speak or avoid speaking in public. But of course, with proper training and good mentor, I think everyone can be a great speaker or a great presenter. Just a little bit of introduction of myself. My name is Arie Krisna. Some of you, the participant, I know personally, but some of you I might never meet you before. Right? So this is a little bit of introduction of myself. I'm a geologist by background. I work as a geologist all my life, the last 15 years. I graduated from ITB and I also take master here in Kuala Lumpur. So I'm doing now live here from Kuala Lumpur. And I've been a geologist starting from Schlumberger and then all moved to Petronas. And then now I'm working with Rockfall Dynamics. However, this is a okay. So this is a typical example of an introduction slide, boring slide with chart or tables. But if you put a little bit effort into it, right? If you put a little bit effort into it, you can actually make the introduction more memorable. So you combine image and you combine maybe colors a bit. So in this case, I will explain a summary of my experience. I'm a senior geologist with 15 years of experience, and these are my working experience. I worked from Schlumberger, moved to CITIC, and then Petronas, and now with Rockfall Dynamics. And my education background is my bachelor is geology and my master is petroleum geoscience. So you can see main difference between this slide and the previous slide. All right. So let me start with a quick icebreaker, right? So as you know, I'm doing this live from Kuala Lumpur, and most of you guys already know what this building is, right? It's a famous Petronas Twin Tower, but maybe there are some facts that you guys don't know yet, right? So, okay, it was the first tallest building in 1998, right? So it's not the tallest building anymore, but it was 1998. It consists of 88th floor. I reached, I think my highest floor in that building was only on the 82nd or 81st. I don't really remember, but yeah, it's very high tower building, right? And now the reputation it's going a little bit down. It's on the seventh tallest in the world. The most interesting fact, though, about this famous tower is that someone actually climbed the tower successfully without any equipment. So bare hand and no rope. So you can imagine. And it was done by this French climber, very famous one, Alain Robert. He got a nickname as the French Spider-Man. Right? So it's very interesting. So he attempted this climb 3 times. The first 2 times he failed because I think the security guard caught him, but then he did it successfully in 2009. So yeah, can you imagine somebody actually climb that tower here without any equipment? So I will show you very quick pictures of him. So you can see this guy with the yellow shirt just climbing it casually, without any equipment, and then actually managed to get on the top. So this is, I think, one of a Petronas employee managed to take a picture of him while he's climbing. And then, but at the end of the day, when he got to the bottom again, he was caught by the police and he spent some time in jail. Anyway, so that's a very interesting fact about the famous Twin Tower, which maybe some of you don't know yet. Okay. All right. So a little bit introduction about myself again. Maybe some of you are not familiar with what geologists do, right? So in a very simple explanation, geology basically study rocks, right? We study rocks, and then we, based on that study, we kind of figure out um, where is the oil basically under the ground, right? So this is what I typically do, right? And then we also go to the field to study rocks, and this is the time where I went to the rig and spend some time, like maybe a week there, but spend like 2 or 3 um, sleepless night on the rig to make sure we didn't miss the target. So this is a little bit of introduction of myself. And in terms of presentation and training, I've been doing a lot of presentation in conference or in training, right? So this is an example of a technology forum that my company had the last year, just very recently. And then this one is the training that we conducted in Kuala Lumpur office, and this one is the training that we conducted in Manila, right? In Manila, where we train our technology to their national oil company. So yeah, I have been doing a lot of presentation, a lot of training, a lot of speaking in front of public. Is because of my job requires me to do that. Right? I hope my voice is clear to all of you because one person say here the voice is not audible to me. But I hope. All right. So Jose from Perth, how are you, man? So yeah, it's very clear. That's good. So I think you just need to maybe your laptop setting. Okay. So yes, this is my exposure in doing presentations. So it's just because of my job requires me to do it. It doesn't mean that I really enjoy going public and speak all the time. No. So it's my job requires to do it. Right. So interestingly, based on the participants, so enough talking about me, but based on the participant that registered from this webinar, I already have about 160 respondent up until today. So it basically divided into two sessions, yesterday and today. And what is interesting for me is it comes from different industries and different background, which is exactly the point of this webinar, because I believe any technical presentation applied is very same principles, right? And what is more interesting is that the participant not only from students or fresh graduates, right, but all the way to people that have more than 20 years experience. This emphasizes the importance of presentation skills, right? Even though with people with already a lot of experience. And of course, since I divided into two sessions, right, there are more participants from Indonesia. So obviously, we have more participants choose the Indonesian Bahasa Indonesia session, but it doesn't mean you cannot join the English session. So it's open as well, right? And I really appreciate all the interest, not only from Indonesia and Malaysia, but also from Thailand, the UK. So good morning for you for people from UK attending this, and also from Australia, India, and Middle East. Right? So it's very promising to see all these interested participants from all over the world. And a little bit of this, I want to emphasize this more. So initially, when I do this, I expected maybe the more participants that will be interested are students or fresh grad. But apparently, a lot of people also from 10 years experience and even 20 years experience with interest in this webinar, right? And people with more than 20 years apparently also still interested. So it's very good to see this. And not only from geoscience background, a lot of them are from engineering, and it's not only petroleum engineering, right? It also have electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, other engineering as well, and a lot of natural science, physics and chemistry, math as well. And one doctor yesterday attended the webinar, and a lot of people from finance and management and accountant and MBA, and some of them from legal and social science. This not available here just means that they didn't put any information regarding their background. Right. And some of the expectation, right? I purposely put this so I try to meet all of your expectations guys here. So one of the most common being confident, being more fluent in delivering presentation, how to combine verbal and visual persuasion in your presentation, right? This is very valid here. How to keep your audience attention not drifted away. It's already very difficult in face-to-face presentation, and it's even more difficult doing online presentation. The other expectation is I want to be a better communicator with my team, bosses, and clients. So his expectation is beyond presentation itself. So he wants to apply it in his communication skills, which is fair enough, right? And how to re-raise the audience care, similar with this one. And this one is also interesting. The last one here in the bottom, how to simplify a technical presentation to basically emphasize the appetite to use our products. So basically, maybe he's a sales engineer, right? He wants to promote his product, but he has to still explain it in a technical way. So how you can combine this both aspects. All right. The other, fluent and confident for pitching the idea. How to make boring stuff sound interesting, right? How to able to deliver the message to non-technical audience. This is very common, right? Because most of the time, decision maker probably doesn't have a background the same as us, right? Maybe the CEO comes from a finance background, a management background, while the presenter comes from an engineering background, right? So this is very valid. I will cover it later. And the fourth one, develop presentation in reference for job seeking. Very fair, fair enough. I will cover this, right? And this is quite a long one. I expect to gain some insightful information because I really avoid presentation. This is not uncommon. This is quite common, for, especially for scientists and engineers who prefer to work with data. Right? We prefer to work on our laptop. We prefer to code, do the coding, rather than talk to people. So this is very valid. And the last one is to get tips on conducting webinars. I have been doing webinars maybe 2 or 3 times starting this COVID-19, but I have a little bit of experience, so I can share it, of course, with you guys later. Okay, so now let's start with the first part, right? Why effective presentation skill is very important. I'm pretty sure you guys already aware the importance of it, hence you guys are joining this webinar, but I want to emphasize more in detail why it's important, right? And especially for technical presentation, why it's different, why it needs a different approach compared to other presentation or general public speaking skills, right? And if I have time in the last session before we finish, I will probably share a personal story based on my personal experience, how presentation skills actually helps me a lot of time. Okay, so now let's see this. I'm taking this COVID-19 example because this is what, I mean, we are all under lockdown now, we are under quarantine because of this pandemic. So I'm taking this example. I got this very interesting slides from my colleague here. Um, this particular image taken from the internet from a professor in geography. So basically what he wants to show is the death cases from because of COVID-19 from these main countries here, 1, 2, 3, all the way maybe to 9 countries. And he tried to differentiate in different color codes and everything. But for me, honestly, if this is shown in the presentation slide, I will already lost, and probably it's either going to be two ways. I'm going to ask a lot of questions to make sure I understand it, or secondly, I will just lost interest in this particular slide. And actually, the key message that the author wants to deliver is pretty simple. Mortality in 7 countries because of COVID-19, starting from January to April, right? But I'm pretty sure this slide will take a lot of effort into explaining. So not really suitable for presentation style. Maybe for report is okay, but not for presentation. Or you can either choose a simpler and more effective way, right? Straightforward, straight to the point, um, not too much information, but people can get it. So this particular image I take from a from internet, which is viral in Kuala Lumpur. So basically, it said, please use your mask, otherwise you die, I die, everyone die, right? It's very straightforward, just using text without any image, but we pretty much get the message of the author, right? And it's very interesting that he put his name high tech, but I don't think he sells any high tech equipment in his store here. It's ice cream and some cakes here. So, but again, we got the message. It's very dangerous if you don't use mask under this situation right now. But of course, for us technical people, when we're presenting something technical, it's not going to be as simple as this. It's going to be something in between the previous slide, and this particular slide. Okay, presentation skill, of course, everyone knows the importance. But if you look at the top 10 soft skills, right, from communication, self-motivation, leadership, responsibility, teamwork, communication is quite high on the list. And presentation skill is part of communication skill. It's a branch of communication skill, and it's pretty much high on the list. So in terms of HR and psychology, right, soft skills plays an important role, and communication, presentation skill plays an important role. Maybe you have an example, or maybe you have seen like some colleagues of you, technically they are not really like very technical, right, in terms of knowledge, but they have a good combination of soft skills. This kind of people can get to a ladder of management, or maybe all the way to the CEO or the VP's level because of their complete package, soft skill and hard skills combined. So it's very important. Right. Other things that I would like to emphasize, so not only in particular in presentation skill, but if you already familiar doing presentation in front of public, it will directly improve your communication skills, right? Whether you realize it or not, it will improve your communication skill either with your bosses or your clients or your colleagues or in your day-to-day life. This will definitely advance your career, no doubt about it. Key factor for leadership. No leader that is having good leadership quality that cannot speak to his followers, right? So every leader, good leader in the world, have a very good communication skill and presentation skill. And once you get used to it, it will boost your confidence, right? I come from a very shy background myself. I grown as an introvert, but now because I'm already used to, I get exposure a lot in presentation. That's it actually improve my confidence level as well. And it trains you to be a more positive person, right? You cannot come to a situation where you present but you have a negative mindset. You have to come in a positive mindset. So it will train you to have a positive mindset in general. And of course, at the end, it will contribute to your individual success as well. Right. So this is just a statistic, right? How important in terms of career, right? So we all know that technical profession, we must deliver important presentation all of the time, and great presentation skill will make you more valuable at work, right? So people who do all the good work but cannot present maybe won't get exposure a lot to the management. Right? So if you do a lot of presentation, make sure you do a good presentation so it will be recognized by the management. And based on a statistic here, 92% agrees. This is a survey done by Prezi here in the US. So 92% agrees or very agree that uh, presentation skills is one of the most important factor in your career. And not only that, on the contrary, right, this is interesting, almost 80% of them agree that most of the presentation that they attended are boring. So this is um, pretty sad in a way, right? Because we are talking about presentation skills is very important, but when you attend a presentation, it's boring, right? So how you can actually resolve this? Right? Why and how a presentation can be boring, and can a technical presentation be interesting, right? So yeah, 80% don't agree with them. It's basically a survey done just recently 2 years ago in the US. So for fresh graduate that have expectation, right? So yes, a better presentation skill will definitely help you in interviews, right? Because you're already used to present in a lot of big audience, right? Maybe 10, 20 people, or maybe hundreds of people. Of course, facing an interviewer, 2 or 3 person, will feel very easy for you. And since you're already doing presentation a lot, you are be able to articulate your communication much clearer. Your audience will understand it better. This will help you in any interview session, or in just a general discussion or negotiation meeting. Right? So you will be able to answer questions. You will be able to handle different type of audience, right? Because there will always be a question and answer session, and it will help you to be more calm and confident once you do a lot of presentation. And this one, of course, it always be applicable in any stage of your career. Doesn't matter whether you're a fresh grad or you are already in the industry for 20 years, right? It will always help you in your career. Okay, so now we're going to the second part, right? This is probably the most interesting part for you guys. How actually to be a great presenter, right? Um, some of them argue it's because of personality. Some people are just not born to be a good speaker. But then why it's called a presentation skill? Is it really a talent or is it a skill, right? So if it's a skill, can it be trained? And again, can technical presentation not be boring? Can it still be interesting, right? So I will cover this on the next few slides, and let's see whether some of your question already answered. Okay, so this one, maybe most of you or some of you already have seen this abbreviation, right? IMTP, ESTP, INFG, right? So this is a personality type psychology indicator. A lot of major companies in the world, 500 Fortune companies, use this either for an interview to make sure the candidate is suitable for a particular role, or they use this once the employee is already hired and they want to know better what kind of training they should get. Right? So this is just the explanation. There are extrovert, introvert, sensor, intuitive, thinkers, judges, and perceiver. So all of these are very important to analyze what kind of personality you have. So self-awareness is very important, right? Once you're aware of yourself more, then you can approach your style better. Right? Introvert, of course, have a different style of presentation rather than an extrovert, right? So most of engineers or scientists will fall under the introvert category, or here and here. So maybe pilot here, civil engineers, investment banker, software developer, mostly fall under an introvert category. But it doesn't mean that it's 100% fall under uh, fall under introvert category. Right? Some of them are actually extrovert, but most of the time, let's say most of the time, scientists and engineers falls. And the question is, can introverts handle public speaking better than an extrovert? There are a lot of tips that I can give you on this, right? But I would just simplify it in a way that introverts can and do a good job in delivering public speaking or presentation, similar as extrovert or maybe even better. In my workshop that I normally do for a full day, I cannot really cover this on this webinar because of time, of course, limited time. But in my one-day webinar workshop, I will emphasize on what's the weakness and the strength of both category have, and how you can approach this to overcome your public speaking limitation. Let me go to the next slide. So once you're already aware of yourself, whether you're more of an introvert or whether you're more of an extrovert, whether you are more into data or you are more into feelings, right? So those are the things that is very important to understand yourself, so you can have a better approach. You understand yourself better, so you can customize your presentation style. So the next question, is it a skill or a talent? It's always called a skill, right? So it's a skill, and because it's a skill, it can always be trained, and it's as simple as any other skills out there. Whether you play music or whether you play sports, right? Talent maybe only contribute 1 or 2%. The remaining part is effort. How much you put your effort into it, how much you train, and perseverance is key. All the top athletes out there, all the top performers, or maybe the CEO, um, they always say that it's not because of the talent, it's just because I work hard. That's the key. So the same goes as presentation skill. Once you train yourself, you put a lot of effort into it, right? You keep on repeating it, and then by the end of the day, you will achieve a good presentation skill. Let me go to the next slide. So this may be the next question you guys have. So what needs to be trained? I took this example from a famous TEDx speaker here. So he is specialized in communication and public speaking, so more of a general kind of style. So he mentioned that there is 110 techniques of communication and public speaking skills. Of course, this is too much to be covered one by one in this webinar, but let me make it shorter and then narrow it down to 6 main techniques. Right? So nervousness, this is the most common things that I got from my friends or my clients. And then how voice affect your presentation, how your body language, affect your presentation, and other things, facial expression, the way you express it, right? Your language style, whether it's a persuasive or more of a speech, right? So I will cover this in the next few slides, but let me start with the most common one, which is how you handle nervous in public speaking. So nervousness actually comes from insecurity when deliver public speaking in front of big audience, right? This is the common thing. I don't like to be watched by people. I don't like to be the center of the attention. I don't like all the eyes looking at me at the same time, right? And I have to deliver a presentation. I don't like to be in the spotlight. This is very, very typical and it's very valid as human, right? And there is actually a phobia called glossophobia, or fear of public speaking. So basically, this guy maybe already like reached to the extreme level, but I'm very sure that most of us here don't have this phobia. But of course, nervous is human. It's very natural. Even I got nervous, even though I already have doing this so many times. I got nervous doing this. That's why I do it, right? I do some preparation. I do a little bit of, you know, listen to music to reduce my nervousness. So it's common, guys. You don't have to worry about that. You just have to channel it into a better presentation, right? But it helps, of course, if you slow down your nervousness, right? So first advice that I can give to you guys is stop thinking about yourself, right? Don't overthink, right? Don't overthink that, oh, how people will judge me, how people will look at me. Maybe people don't like the way I dress, right? Maybe I will look fatter in this outfit. Stop thinking about that, right? And it will ease your nerve in handling presentation. And always keep a positive attitude. If you be positive, it will definitely help you. Don't come with a negative mindset. A lot of people come with a negative mindset because they fear that there will be questions that they cannot answer. There will be questions that they cannot handle, right? But try to be positive. It will really helps. Exercise lightly here, just meaning that take a slow walk. Don't just sit in the corner, right? It will increase your nervousness. So take a slow walk. Maybe just go outside, take some fresh breath of air, right? It's very important. And this one is also important. Take a powerful pose. Don't bend over like this. Try to stand straight, right? And try not to sit down. Try to stand. Right? It's always advisable if you stand, and then make eye contact. Make eye contact to the audience. If you feel it's a little bit hard, then just try to look in the middle of the forehead here, so it have the same eye level as your audience. So it will help. And drink water. And of course, because I'm fasting right now, I cannot drink water, but drinking water will help. And it's okay, actually. It's okay, and it's nothing wrong if you want to do a drinking water in the middle of your presentation. That's totally okay. Right? And make sure you already address the worst case scenario. For instance, your projector doesn't work. Make sure you already have a backup projector. Or your laptop doesn't work. Make sure your colleague have an additional laptop. So prepare all of this, and your nervousness will be reduced. Right. And this is also important: verbal versus non-verbal, especially I mean, not online presentation, but during face-to-face presentation, right? Most of the time, it's not about what you say. It's really about how you say it. So this is some research by some famous psychologists, right? So the words itself can only be remembered 7%, but the other focus is on the voice tone, the modulation. It will really give a big impact. So if I deliver this in a very monotonous voice, you guys will lose interest for sure. And for face-to-face meeting, body movements, your face, your arms will really give a significant impact on how you deliver the presentation. That's one of the reasons I'm putting a video here. Typically, webinar don't show any video, but I would always like to show my video so you can see how I present and you feel a more connection from me to the audience, right? And what's interesting here, this verbal and non-verbal is used in lie detection method, right? Um, what it detect here is basically how your body reacts when you talk, even though you're saying something that appears to be right, but if you lied about it, the lie detection will get that. And this is a famous quote by a famous psychologist, Sigmund Freud: if his lips are silent, he will chat with his fingertips, right? So your body movement will tell you whether you're confident or not. Of course, for technical presentation, we are not reliable on data, right? But people can tell if you are not confident. For instance, if your boss asks you to present, right, you to present his stuff, but you're not really familiar with his stuff, the audience can tell if you're not confident. Right? So make sure that we are very careful with this. Okay, now we're going to the third part, right? how we prepare a presentation. Most of the time, us as technical people, we spend maybe 1 week, 3 days, or maybe 2 weeks to prepare a presentation, especially when you have to deliver it to a high level, maybe the VP or the GM, all the way coming visit from maybe the headquarters from Houston or from Moscow coming to see your presentation. So it's very important to make sure you deliver a good presentation skill, to good the presentation style, right? So what you should prepare and how can I effectively use image in my slide? Technical presentation always involves a lot of image. So how you can combine a balanced amount of image and text, right? And is it a good idea to make a technical presentation simple? This is quite challenging for us. We want to make it simple, but we don't want to oversimplify it, right? Otherwise, the key message is gone, the data is gone. But we want to make it simple enough so the larger of audience can understand what are the key messages that we want to deliver. Right. So technical presentation, I would say always, technical presentation is the most difficult presentation to make, right? If you only ask to be a moderator in a wedding event, that's easy, right? I mean, of course, you got nervous and everything, but you don't really have to prepare. Or you your boss asks you to be a moderator for a corporate event. That's pretty easy because you basically just need to be a bridge between the audience and the main speaker. But if you become the main speaker itself, then you really have to put a lot of effort into preparing your presentation style, presentation deck. And then this is the second part that is very important. You always have to understand that your audience most likely will be mixed. Most of the time, it will not come from the same background, even though you're still in the same industry. For me, for example, I'm a geologist, but most of the time I present not only to geologists, I present to engineers, I present to mathematicians, I present to physicists. So which is totally have different backgrounds than me, but I have to make sure that they understand my message. And this, most of the time, so the third point is most of the time important critical business decision is made based on the presentation result. For instance, um, let's say I'm a geologist. I want to propose a well that costs maybe, I don't know, in offshore Malaysia, it costs 20 million US dollar. Right? Can you imagine this amount of money that need to be invested is relying on my presentation to my GM or to my CEO. So you really have to make sure you want to deliver a good presentation. You don't want to have the previous 6 months of work or 1 year of work goes into nothing because of your 30 minutes or 1 hour presentation is not convincing, right? Just remember that. So the first thing that you need to do is you have to set the objective. This is the very first thing that you have to do, right? Establish a strong reason why you want to present in the first place. Do you want to make your drilling campaign works? Do you want to propose a drilling campaign, right? Or secondly, let's say you are a software developer. You want to sell your apps for your, and then you want to present it to your investor, right? The investor has the one that has the money, and then you want to make sure that you convince this guy, which probably doesn't come from an IT background, to invest a lot of money into your stuff. So establish a strong reason. So that's why you can tailor your presentation and how you want to achieve it. All right. And the second is you have to understand what kind of presentation that you want to deliver. Every presentation have different objectives, and they have to be tailored of you what to achieve. And then you also have to understand what you want your audience to know or feel or do. You want to know, you want to have a follow-up after your presentation, right? Whether your audience agreed to buy your product or you buy your technology or invest in your apps, right? Or maybe they agree to test your technology, right? So make sure you know what type of presentation that you are doing, right? And either for a technical conference, right? I think this is me included. A lot of technical people like us, we make a mistake like when we submit a paper and then we invite it for a presentation, and then we see the presentation itself as the final purpose, um, the final destination. Don't treat it that way. You have to have a bigger objective than that. So let's say You want to present in that technical conference because you want your idea or theory to be implemented by other companies or other people in that same industry. So by using that kind of approach, you will have a better motivation and better incentive to prepare your presentation more optimally. The same goes for fresh graduates or for job seekers, right? If you want to get hired, then make your presentation as good as possible, and then people will recognize, right? People will recognize your value of what you have been doing, and then they can maybe hire you to join their organization. For technical proposal, this is quite obvious, right? If you want to propose a well, if you want to propose a location to be developed, or if you want to propose a new design for your factory, you are a mechanical engineer, you design a new machinery, right? And then you get to need to have the approval from your boss, your GM, or your CEO. So it's very important. Otherwise, all your work previously goes to nothing. All you want to basically sell, right? At the end of the day, we are all salesperson. You have to sell your project. You have to sell your work. You have to sell your skills, right? And then this is a good example of if you want to sell a technology or a product and it's a technical thing, right? It's a technical, maybe it's a new machine learning technology, it's a new artificial intelligence software. You want to explain this to people that don't really have the same background so they can understand what's the advantage of using your product. And then after you understand what is your objective, you understand what is the type of your presentation that you're going to do, and then you have to understand your audience, right? Who are they? Do they already know about the topic, or they have totally no idea? If it's internal, it's easier, right? If it's internal, then you present to your own boss, and then maybe your GM already know whatever project that you're doing, so it's easy. But let's say you are working as a consultant, or you're working as a service company, right? You will present to a client where they have no idea what you're doing, what your company is. So you really need to know the audience, right? Then how much do they understand? And what's their main concerns or problems and issues? It's very good if you do a little bit of homework before you go to see your client and do presentation. So you know what their problem is, and you can tailor your presentation according to whatever they want to solve. And of course, it will affect the way you present it. If you're presenting to a technical level, then you can keep it technical. But of course, if you present to a high level, you want to keep it general but with high impact. Again, this one is still part of the understanding your audience. Technical people like us tend to take this for granted. We directly assume that everyone knows what we are doing, but it's not, guys. So please avoid any abbreviation. Please avoid any specific technical specification, right, that your audience might not understand. Or if you want, you can explain it always, right? And then if you are speaking to engineers or scientists, working level, keep it technical. That's okay. But if you're talking to high level board of directors, CEO, VPs, um, GM, then make it broad, general, but focus on the impacts. And most of the time, your audience will be a mix of both. So you have to always understand that because you never know. Maybe the finance guy is actually the key decision maker, or the HR manager there is the key decision maker. You never know. So you need to address both learning styles. All right. Most of us, maybe 99% of us, use PowerPoint. It's become our go-to tools, right, to use for presentation. There are other tools out there like Google Slides or Prezi, which is very new, but I don't think we're all familiar with that. So I'm going to focus on PowerPoint. But most of the time, I'm even with me, like during my initial career days, we tend to overcrowded PowerPoints with just too much information. Technical people have this tendency to want to put everything, all the equations, all the spreadsheets, all the formulas, right? So, but you have to understand that it's not us that it's not them, it's not the audience that doing the project, or it's not the audience that understand the product. It's our responsibility to deliver it to the audience so they can understand in the simplest manner, right? Uh, this is the challenging part. Whenever you display a very complex information, right, very complex or very detailed information, there is always a chance. Doesn't matter how experienced you are, doesn't matter how many times you're doing presentation, there will always be a chance of your audience daydreaming, right? They will be drifted away, their attention goes to someone else, something else, right? And of course, mobile phone these days doesn't really help, right? People, when they got distracted, they just look at their mobile phone. And if you're doing a face-to-face presentation, it's easier to spot that, right? So you can adjust your presentation. But doing webinar like this online presentation, it's very difficult. So you want to make sure that this can always be happen, and keeping the audience continuously engaged is very difficult. Right? So these are things to consider whenever you do presentation, and there are tips actually to handle this. Right. So some of the expectation from the webinar, how you combine verbal and visual support in your presentation. Right? Verbal, of course, it's pretty obvious. Your voice, your pitch, your intonation, your language, your style, right? But the visual support, visual aid, most of the time we use um, PowerPoint. So how you can combine and optimize the PowerPoint that have images, graphs, pie chart, table sheets, all of those complicated things, right? And then deliver it in a most efficient and effective way. So the next slide will show you a different example of text slide. If you're using a slide full of text, right? And then with image. Based on study, right? A lot of study has done this before. Based on study, people will remember 80% of what they see. See here meaning image, pictures, right, or graphs. And then only 20% of them, of those what they see, they remember is based on what they read. So text is very difficult things for human brain to remember. That's why a lot of advertisement, right, a lot of them using combination of a lot of images and maybe just fewer. And I can show you a very obvious example here. If I display it like this, I'm pretty sure your brain will even remember this more vividly. 80% is based on what they see, only 20% is based on what they read. So you will probably remember this more compared to this. And if I don't have this, only have this text, you probably will easily forget after this presentation is finished. Right. So let's go to the next slide. The next slide is just a very quick quiz. Right? It's a fun quiz, so nothing very technical about this. It's just a fun quiz to see how human brain react to certain images or certain text. Right? So please take a very close look carefully at the next slide, and please try to remember the slide. So observe the circles carefully. Okay, so if you can answer this question, right? In which circle below the word red is written? Not the color, yeah? The word red is written. Is it 1 or 2 or 3, 4, 5, or 6? You can try to explain try to answer it in the chat box. Just type it in the chat box, and I want to see. And for you guys that already attended the first session yesterday, just don't try to answer it. Don't try to spoil the answer. But yeah, so that was pretty fast, right? But what you can guess is that people tendency is to remember the shape or the color compared to the text. So very good. I can see all the answer here. So that's true. It's number 4. But most of the time, as our first reaction, whenever we see color or image, we will remember that more compared to the text. So that's why a combination of image and shape is very powerful instead of text alone, right? So let's go to the next slide. The next slide will show you a good example of, even though you use image a lot, but if you overcomplicate the image, right, it may not deliver the key message that you want to achieve. Right? So the first image on the left here, and the second image on the right. So I'm just taking this from the internet. I just want to show you a comparison between simple image and complicated image. So without any explanation, I tend to understand more the second image on the right here. It's very easy to understand, right? So you have a number of uh, beach ball sail here, right? And the number of temperature. So it's easy to understand that, okay, once the temperature is rising here, then the number of sails for the balls also increasing. Basically, it's summer, right? So when it's summer, people go to the beach more, and then that's why the ball got sails more. However, in this particular image on the left here, right, if you see here, um, probably what it tried to explain is the list of client, right? And the number of respondents based on the clients here. And it's divided on different colors. So viewing statistic management report, using personalized dashboard, doing simple ad hoc analysis. So this is probably a technology, right? Or a platform that this company is trying to sell, um, or trying to see how the customers are using it. But if you see here, okay, maybe you can understand the client that use the most is this one, Tableau, right? Compared to the Actuate or SAP and IBM. These are the least client using the technology. But if you already see the image here, then it's very difficult already to, for instance, I'm using this blue bar here, and it's already hard to make a comparison between this right here, the Tableau, on the blue color compared to this, or maybe this. Which one is higher? Because it's not coming from the same starting point, right? And this basically make your audience even more confused, and then you have to explain it more detail. You maybe have to explain the numbers, and you have to take out from the spreadsheet. So this kind of complicated image doesn't really help in live presentation. Maybe in a text of a report is okay, but in live presentation it will make it even more confusing, right? Especially when the bar chart is very close to each other, right? And it's not starting from the same point. From for red or pink one here is okay, but the blue one is already confusing. So now you understand how you can carefully use image information in your slides. So the next few slides, I'm taking some examples. Most of them are from the oil and gas industry because my background is oil and gas. But I will also try to take example from other industry. Right? And all of these slides here are from real presentation from major companies worldwide. So they're still doing this mistake, right? Even though they have been doing this a lot of time. So this is a slide that I took from my previous company when I was still working in Jakarta. So basically, this consultant present to us, right? And it seems that the consultant is not really confident in the memorizing whatever he want to present. So whether in his slide, he basically put all the script that he want to say. So you can see here, this can actually be simplified much more, and you don't really have to script everything what you want to say on the slide, because what's the worst thing that can happen is at the end of the day you will just read your slide and you will lose connection with your audience. So please avoid this thing. Right? This one I took from a webinar, online webinar from YouTube. Right? So it's a consultant that also tried to see. This is from 2015, so it's 5 years ago. He want to basically highlight the 15 biggest oil bankruptcies. Right? So it's pretty related with the current situation where a lot of oil companies goes bankrupt, right? But if you can see here, he want to put all of the 15 companies with all the details, 5.3 billion in debt, 4.3 billion. I think he can simplify just by using 5. Don't need to put any decimals, right? And maybe instead of the text here, just put the logo. That's good enough. Logo and the number. of the depth. That's very good enough, right? And then people will easily memorize it even better. And maybe don't have to list all the 15. Maybe the top five is enough. That's an example. Okay, this is another example. So we have the slide with too many texts, right? And this is an example of a lot of image and charts. So this probably relate with the question that I have in the chat box. Is it okay to just put one chart or one sentence in one slide, or and the details in our speech, right? So yeah, it's actually okay. What you need to put in your slide is the key information, right? And all the other details you can deliver it verbally. Right? So if you put a lot of details like this, these are four wells. It shows all the production, right? The production, the water cut, the gas production rate, and the pressure. I would say in this slide can be simplified maybe only one well per slide, right? Or if you want to compare two or three, four wells, choose the key wells and maybe try to compare the oil production in a separate slide and the water cut in a separate slide. And if you want to combine, try to make it maybe different colors so people can recognize which one refers to which. Right? So please avoid this. Please avoid these overcomplicated slides. Otherwise, your audience will be confused, and at the end, you will have to explain in much longer time. So for me, number of slides is not really a concern. I would have more. I would prefer to have more slide pages rather than try to compact it, right? But then overload it with too much information like this. This is something that I will always try to avoid. Okay, still another example from the oil and gas. Okay, this particular example here, it's very good. They include image here. The image is quite simple, but the text for me is still a little bit too much. I'm pretty sure most of you won't read this, right? Um, from my personal opinion, he can simplify this, just put all the key information, right? What's the salinity number, right? What's the main pressure? What's the gradient? And that's about it. You don't have to put all the other text. But I can understand why they're doing this, because this was taken from a report that they created, and because maybe of limited time, they just copy paste all the reports into their slide PowerPoint and then present it to management. But I would strongly suggest or advise to you guys, if you have to present something from the report, try to make more effort into delivering your slides to be more simplified, but still capture the main key details, right? Because on this case, you probably will lose all of this information, and you will be distracted with the image here as well. You cannot really focus because you tend to try to read this, but you will remember this more. So yeah, it's quite confusing. Okay, this one as well. This is, I think it's pretty okay, right? I mean, it's not too complicated and everything. But personally, I would say this can be simplified a little bit more, right? I think this is a well designed that is designed by the drilling engineer, and we want to propose it to the management, right? But as non-drilling people, maybe all the other information is not really important. So for instance, like this, the choke, right, the master valve, maybe what he want to highlight is only on the reservoir target here, the interval target, which is the key, and the total depth. That is totally fine for general audience, or even for geoscientists and reservoir engineers. We don't really need all this other information. So as an audience, I would appreciate if the presenter put a little more effort and try to clean this image, or maybe try to make the other information slightly bigger, the text, so we can read it even better. This one as well. This is coming from a famous consultancy company, famous service company. The company presented to my team at that time, back in 2010, I think. Uh, but this is obviously just a report that he copy pasted into his presentation slide. I covered the name of the company, right? Because you don't really need to know that. But what he did is just simply copy paste, right? And of course, me as an audience, I already lost interest to see this. I don't want to read all of this detailed information. Why don't the consultant put more effort and then just focus on the key information that he wants to deliver? Maybe the total length of the reservoir thickness, right? And maybe some of the porosity and water saturation. And I don't need all the 4 decimals. If you can make it into 1 decimal or 2 decimal, that's max. Don't overcomplicate your slide. So then you can have a bigger font, right? And you can also optimize this area, which he totally neglect. And he can actually use this area to have this table here clearly shown with a bigger font and clearer text. Right? It's just a clear example that sometimes we don't want to go into more effort in preparing our presentation, which actually doesn't really take time. So now you're wondering, is there any example of good presentation slide with the right combination of text and image? And technical people like us, we don't have the luxury as a CEO level, right? CEO like Bill Gates or maybe Steve Jobs can just present their new launching product with just a simple single icon or a logo. Steve Jobs can present that with the famous Apple logo, or Bill Gates can present like this, right? So it's very powerful, but of course, again, we don't have that luxury. But there is always a way to combine images and text in a very optimum way. So this one I'm taking again from the oil and gas example. This particular slide I took from a webinar that was presented last weekend, I think, conducted by the Indonesian Association. It was presented by one of the senior geologists working in Woodside in Perth, Australia. So it's a very interesting slide. So even though I'm not from geophysics background, but I'm geologist, so I understand geophysics. But of course, I wouldn't understand as detailed as him, right? But I really like his slides. I really like the way he presents his idea, right? So what it does here, basically, he just present 2 reservoirs here, the upper and the bottom, right? In a map. So what he's trying to say is whether this discontinuity here actually is true or false. So for you guys that are not coming from geophysics or oil and gas background, seismic is basically an image profile of the subsurface condition under the earth to potentially recognize where is the good sand, which potentially have a better reservoir, which potentially have better oil there. Right? So what he wants to emphasize here, whether this thinning effect here in the sand, so this is the sand body, is actually real or it's because of the masking effect on the sand channel below that causing this. So without explaining all the detailed equation and everything, right, you just basically have these 2 images, right, do a forward modeling and understand, but apparently this thinning effect here is not real. It's supposed to be have the same thickness of the sand. So the thickness of the sand is continuous. So you can see, right, it's a very straightforward way to explain, but he still put the text, right? So just to distinguish the formation name, which one is which sand, but not overcomplicated things because he understands that the potential webinar audience may be not coming from a geophysics background. So what if your question is, but how if there are very expert in this field and they potentially ask the detailed question? That's okay. You can prepare your very detailed slide in your backup slide, right? Your backup slide, you can always take it out once there are more detailed questions. So for instance, if somebody asks, what's the equation, what's the formula, what's the method that you use to do this? And then you can just take that backup slide. Or maybe you can put it in the next slide, but with a simplified version. So that's from an oil and gas example. Now let me go to a more general example here, right? From finance. So this example is, I took this actually from one famous LinkedIn presenter expert. So this guy is focusing on presentation skill, but focus more on finance and Excel table. So what he does is, this is a cash flow or forecast scenario of the cash flow of a company, how it will behave in the next few months, right? And this chart will be updated maybe on a daily basis, and the modeler or the financial modeler will have to come up with the best, worst, and most likely scenarios. For among themselves, it's okay to actually present like this, but what it advice is what this advice is that you can actually simplify this slide if you want to present to your board of directors, because board of directors just want to see the, sorry, go back. So the board of directors maybe only want to see the best case, the worst case, and the most likely, right? And that's good enough for them. It doesn't mean that you're hiding data, no, but you emphasize on your key message here that the uncertainty is this big, right? So you don't have to overcomplicate things with the other scenarios, and especially if you run hundreds of scenarios, right? And then you can just narrow it down to your base case, your worst, and your most likely case. And we in the oil and gas industry, we implemented the same approach for the P10, P50, and P90 case. Right? The other example, this is also very interesting. Another finance example. So a typical, if you want to report your financial results for the last year or for the last month, right? And if you just copy paste from your finance reporting, and then you have this table from Excel. You have your revenue, you have all your expenses, and then what the most interesting here is your net income. Right? But if you want to deliver a stronger way, stronger message, so instead of just having this spreadsheet, you can modify this spreadsheet into Excel, and then from a stack column, you can modify it into a waterfall graph like this. So, and it can be divided into three main colors. So basically what your revenue have for your company, right? Your total revenue, 37 million. And what are all your expenses, right? This expense, and your interest and your taxes, right? And then at the end of the day, which one, how much is your net income? So if you deliver it in this kind of chart, I'm pretty sure it will have a more powerful impact and your audience will memorize it easier rather than just this, right? And if you want to see a more complete kind of examples, um, this example I just took from the company that I work with because I did a webinar last month, which is quite interesting. I try to, even though I focus on geology and artificial intelligence, but I want to deliver it in a more subtle way so people that doesn't come from my background can also understand and see the benefit of this technology. So if you are interested to see the whole webinar slides, how the way I present it, you can just go to this YouTube channel and just search RFD Europe, and then you can search on the geology and big data. So this particular example is a good example for you to see what's the best way to deliver a technical presentation, but can be delivered to a bigger audience. Right. So once you prepare all of your slides, you combine all of your image, your charts, and text in the most optimal way. Of course, at the end of the day, you always have to practice. Even for me, I always got nervous whenever I have to present. Doesn't matter if I have to present it in front of hundreds of people, 300 people, or present it online like this. I always prepare. I always do a dry run in front of my friends, in front of my family, and then just practice, right? Practice makes perfect. And you have to remember all the slides. You don't want to be surprised by your own slides. Right? This is typically comes if your slides is prepared by somebody else. Right? And then you have to remember every words and numbers, especially. You don't want to deliver the wrong revenue or the wrong profit for your company if you present it to your management, or you don't want to deliver a wrong value, a volume. So, for instance, if you're a geologist, you present your volume of your oil in place. You don't want to deliver it in a so please remove any typo. Please make sure you don't have any typo, but aware of what possibly can go wrong, right? If you are doing a software demo, make sure that your software might have some bugs. Please make sure you avoid or eliminate that chances to happen. And practice will always ease nerves. I was more nervous yesterday when I delivered the Bahasa Indonesia version, even though it's my mother tongue. And I'm more relaxed now because I already do it before. So that really emphasized the importance of doing practices. So do a dry run. If you don't have friends or colleagues that you can do dry run, record yourself in a video and then you can examine yourself later on. Right? And then we come to the last part, which is how to deliver. So you already train yourself, you already prepare the presentation deck. Then now how you deliver an effective presentation. And presentation is art. There is no right or wrong of how you do it. There is an interesting question from yesterday. One of the lady or the guy was asking whether uh, a motif of your clothes can distract your audience. And he said if it's a checkered shirt or a striped shirt can distract your audience. And I would say, I don't think so. A checkered shirt or a striped shirt is totally fine. But maybe you don't want to have a comic motif on your shirt. That can be a little bit distracting. Right? But a casual business attire should be okay. So don't overthink about this. Right? And speaking is theater, you have to own the presentation. Act as it's your performance, right? So this is very key. Opening, you have to make it very, very strong. Why is that? It's because first impression is always important, right? In Bahasa Indonesia, we always say that kesan pertama begitu menggoda, ya kan? So that's why first impression is always important. Hence, your opening slide have to be very important. Not only the slide, but the way you present it. You have to have a confident introduction, right? Establish some credential, like the way I present just now. I established I introduced some of my previous background, some of my expertise. But you also have to be careful. You don't want to come across as being arrogant, right? You have to present it in a human manner, right? So make sure you don't come across as arrogant. And then secondly is the why. What's the benefit of your audience to see your presentation? Some of them it's pretty clear, right? If it's your boss, then of course he want to see your progress. If it's your GM, he want to see what the team is doing. But if you present to an external parties, right? If you present to a client, and especially when your client is higher level, like VPs or CEO, you don't want to have them lose interest in your first opening, right? So it's very important. And a study say that adult will only listen to the first 10 minutes, and if they are not convinced that this is beneficial for them, they will lose interest just within the first 10 minutes. So make sure your first 10 minutes is important. And again, of course, this is a no-brainer, right? You have to know your subject. You must master the subject that you are presenting. Me personally, I always avoid to present a topic or a task that was assigned by my boss. I would always try to present whatever I was doing. If my boss asked me to do it, I try to understand as much as possible what was he doing so I can understand it as well. And always be prepare for questions, right? There was a question just now in the chat box, right? What's the best attitude when we don't know what the audience is asking, right? This is very valid. And it's actually okay if you don't understand the questions, then you can ask it back, right? So you repeat the question and then say, is this what you mean, right? And then if he say yes, then you can continue to answer. And but if he say, oh no, that's not what I meant, he will try to repeat his question, which is totally okay, right? It's okay to answer back. Is this what your question means? Right? Because most of the time we sometimes don't get the question. So try not to straight away jump to the answer. I would always try to ask back whether that's what he meant, and if he confirmed yes, and then I will answer the question. And of course, at the end of the day, you will not have all the answers possibly, right? Our human brain is just so limited. But it's okay to admit that you don't know the answer. Maybe you can ask Joe, answer it by saying, "Oh, it's a very interesting question, sir, but for the moment, I don't know the answer of that question yet. Please make me do some research, and I will get back to you again soon or later." Right? It's okay to do that, and it's actually a good opportunity to follow up later. So you can ask him his business card, you can ask his contact. So it's actually a good thing to follow up. Right? So if you look at the positive mindset, you will actually open up more opportunity from questions. Okay, this is interesting. Most of technical people tend to fall into this category. We always try to like to present a lot of idea, but try to make it one idea only in one of your presentation. Because if you attempt to do or present a lot of ideas, then there is a good chance that your audience will take nothing, right? You can always present a very complex idea, very complex with several points, but then you have to narrow it down to a single idea. For instance, like this, if you want to present a technology, right, present what's the most benefit value for that technology with regards to your client's need. You don't want to overcomplicate it, your technology with say like, oh, this technology is done locally here, so you have to support your local inventors, or this technology has been there for quite some time, it's been used. Just try to focus. It's good to emphasize the strength, but if it's not relative, right, then it's pretty much won't be remembered by your audience. But try to narrow it down to your to one idea that your client will be most benefit from, right? So for example, um, my technology, the company that I work with, have a technology that cover a lot of things, right? From geology, geophysics, reservoir engineering, production engineering, maybe even for finance or general management, right? But whenever I do a presentation, I would like to focus on one idea, and then that one idea can be understood by many. So try to do it that way. Okay, this is also important. Try to structure your presentation so your audience can follow. Right? If you remember the first slide, the earlier slide, I present my outline into four main topics. Right? Basically, it's covered into these three sections. What's the problem? The technical why technical presentation skill important? The causes, what makes it boring, right? If I go into here, what makes it boring? Why people tend to deliver a boring presentation? And what's the solution? How you prepare and how you deliver it. So you can see I follow this chart here: problem, cause, solution. And if you, let's say, you are a sales engineer, you want to present your technology, or you're a software developer, you want to present your apps to your investor. So focus on your product, and then what's the composition, what's the feature, and the application, what's the benefit that the clients or the end user might get. So if you structure it this way, then your audience can follow. Don't bombard it with a lot of things, non-structured, then your audience will lost in translation, right? Okay, again, don't read your slides. I always emphasize this. I always emphasize this. Of course, during face-to-face presentation, if you read your slides to the screen, then people will only see your back, right? And then you will lose your connection with the audience. So always don't read your slides. Try to deliver it in a natural way, right? Use the slides only to summarize your ideas, but when you present, try to be more natural. This, of course, will take time, but once you practice it more and more, you will get used to it. And this is just a funny image that I took from the internet. So when you read your slide, this is what your audience see, right? Back of your head, bad posture, definitely no eye contact whatsoever, excessive movement maybe, and lack of useful gestures, and some robotic presence. And there is no storytelling because you're not connected to your audience. Um, this is definitely happening when you're doing a face-to-face presentation. But even on an online presentation, try to avoid reading your script. It's okay to have bullet point or notes, but try not to read a script directly, right? Even during a webinar, because even on a webinar, if you read the script, your audience can tell. I recently heard a webinar and I immediately can tell that the presenter was reading the scripts all the way from start to the end. And it just feels lack of connection, lack of emotion, right? Because it doesn't feel real time. It just feels it's recorded, right? So try to not read it. And if you want to have some tips, you don't want to forget, it's actually okay to have some small notes if you're doing a face-to-face, right? Face-to-face, it's okay to have a small notes on a piece of paper, like several notes, and then make it as a bullet point. That's totally advisable. Don't do don't use your don't use your handphone to have your notes. Handphone doesn't look professional when you're reading your handphone while presenting. But notes is okay. Small notes is alright. Just to prevent you forget whatever you want to say whenever you blank, right? And tell a story. I always love to tell a story whenever I present because it makes the connection to the audience and it's more engaging, it's more memorable. And they say stories build trust, right? And especially if it's real stories, right? Whenever I present, I always try to um, use my previous experience. For instance, I would say I'm quite lucky in the way because I come from both sides. I come from a service company and I work for an operator and I worked out again from a service company. So I always try to relate that. So for instance, whenever I present a technology, I would say, oh yeah, back in the days when I used this technology, it helped me this and this and this. And so it always create a connection. And stories build trust. Once you once you tell stories, that trust will be built by itself. This is also the things that I also like to highlight. Try to repeat it. Repeat the key message. You don't have to repeat it in a similar sentence, right? Very exact same sentence, but try to repeat in a different sentence, but the key message is the same. Because repetitiveness is your friend. Audience have only very limited attention span. Most likely, they will only remember the very first, the opening, and the end. Something in the middle, of course, they wouldn't remember 100% of it, maybe only 50% of it. So always repeat. Repeat is your biggest friends here, and at least say it 3 times. In the first, in the middle, uh, and in the end, right? Like my example just now, I try to always emphasize the key importance of presentation, right? How is important, why is it important, and how you can do it. So I always deliver it and try to repeat it so you guys can remember. And the closing. The closing is very important to make it memorized because this is when the audience tend to be awake again and say, oh, okay, the presentation is finished. So what's actually the summary? That's why in every presentation that I always suggest you put a summary slide, right? Don't just end up like anticlimax and there is no summary. Always try to put a good summary and then client will remember. Um, and then repeat again your message so your audience will remember. And at the end, of course, always say thank you. Okay, some few last slides. I really like this quote from Albert Einstein. Right? If you cannot explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Or in other quotes, they say if you cannot explain it to a sixth grader, then you don't understand it. This is actually very true, right? Like if you don't really understand it, then it's very difficult to explain it in a simple manner. I would like to show you an example, just very recently actually, where I have to present only within 3 to 5 minutes on an event. It's a technical presentation on an event, but I only have 3 to 5 minutes allocated. Um, this event, probably you guys may be familiar with the people here. So this event is an internal event where we are service company are invited. So there are about 5 service companies that are invited. My company was one of it, right? So in this case, I can only present in not more than 5 minutes. And it's even worse because during the actual event itself, the committee comes to me and say, excuse me, sir, but can you do it in 3 minutes because the time is very limited. All the VPs have to go for another meeting after this. And I was like, okay, so I can do it in three minutes. And the audience are VP levels and technical advisor. So the challenge for me is how can I deliver my technology in a very short time, but I can deliver it in a powerful way so the key message is still delivered. So let me show you a video after this, a very short video, maybe only 30 seconds. And there is no sound, but you can observe and examine my body language in this slide, in this video later. So even though you cannot really hear my voice here, but you can feel how confident I am, how comfortable I am in presenting my product or my technology. And even the audience don't really look at me all the time, but in a way they can feel the presence of my confidence during myself giving this presentation, right? So again, non-verbal is still very important even though you deliver a technical presentation. And it's actually okay to show a little bit of enthusiasm, right? Because once you're enthusiastic, then your audience can see that you're confident. And once they see that you're confident in your product, then they are confident in your product itself. Right? So the appetite to test your product is increased. And actually, the good result of this, based on only this 3 minutes presentation, the next few weeks after this, we were invited to a larger audience to present to them, to the client here, which I will just say, mention the name, it was Petronas, the exploration team, the whole team, to present our technology, which previously didn't really happen because our technology is more focused on the development and production side. So with only a 3 to 5 minutes presentation, I actually opened a lot of door to the next opportunity. So don't ever underestimate the amount of presentation that you can give. You can still deliver a very strong message. Okay, so just few more remaining slides. So typically I do this technical presentation workshop on a weekend basis because I'm still doing my main job. So this is more of my side hustle. I don't really look for profit, obviously. I just want to share my skills to the young professional and fresh graduate. Typically, I do this for a full day, one day in Jakarta, right? But after this COVID-19, it's a little bit hard. So, and the good thing about this workshop is it's not only me presenting and give you tips, but we also encourage the participant to present their project, to present their product, whatever their project they are doing, and we and me as well can give a constructive feedback to them so they can improve in the next on their next opportunity, right? Most of major companies do this. I was lucky when I was in Schlumberger during my early career. We were trained 3 full days how to do a good technical presentation. 3 full days. But of course, um, I can do this on a weekend basis. So normally I just do it on one day. But this is, I think, is a good start already for you guys if you want to learn more. And it's not only for fresh graduate or students, but I can also tailor this for corporates of seasoned professional and in any industry. It doesn't have to be oil and gas. But of course, because this is COVID-19, it's very hard to do a class session. So what I'm doing right now, what I'm offering right now is I can do an online training or coaching, right? It's more flexible. I can one of the example I conducted a webinar like this free webinar, and I can also do a virtual coaching one-on-one method. This particular example is from one of my friend. Because of friend, of course, this is free of charge. I just basically help her to do. She's a finance staff. I basically help her to do a to prepare for his probation presentation. So it's pretty important, right? She doesn't want to fail her probation period, so I help her delivering the presentation. And doing online like this, it can be also tailored to specific needs, and the timing is very flexible. So if you're very interested, um, feel free to email me. Feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn as well, right? So this is my LinkedIn profile. You can also like my Facebook page. I have a specific Facebook page that I posted some tips and trick on presentation skills, and not only presentation skill, but also on career advice for professionals. So like my Facebook page, please feel free to go there. This is how it looks like, and this is some of the recommendation that um, my senior, my friend here, he's a safety engineer, works for ConocoPhillips Indonesia and Malaysia. So that's one of the next recommendation, right? And if you guys have questions, please feel free. I have answered some of the questions already. There is one question here. Um, you already have quite extensive experience in technical presentation. Who is the most important person you ever presented to, right? So, okay, this is very interesting. During my early career, I think I was still 3 years with the company with Schlumberger. There is an exhibition that I have to attend. It's called IPA, Indonesian Petroleum Association, and one of the key VIPs that came there was the Minister of Energy, and I was a little bit panicked, right, because the Minister of Energy come, and since Schlumberger, was a big company, they immediately come to our booth, and I have to present to him again during a very short time, 3 to 5 minutes, and I was even in the local newspaper at the time. I think it was Surabaya or Jakarta. I couldn't remember, but I was in the local newspaper, so I don't remember whether I keep the picture. But yeah, that was the most important person that I think that I've ever presented to the Minister of Energy during the early 2000. All right, any questions, guys? Let me see. Is it okay just to put one chart or one sentence in one slide and the details in our speech? Yes, totally okay. If you can remember, yes. But if you have other details, it's advisable to always keep a backup slide, right? Padike, I used to work with him as well. He now works with Pertamina. But we used to work with Citic Seram together. So yes, Padike, like our last experience, we always keep backup slides just in case people want to know more detail in terms of the table, the spreadsheet, the charts, right? And actually, backup slide also is important to put in the backup slide because you want to avoid unnecessary discussion, unnecessary questions, right? Where did I get the image, the icons? Any recommended sites? Uh, Most of the image and the icons I get from the internet, right? And most of them I actually create myself as well. I like to draw, I like to design, so I do also on my free time to draw and design. But I think it's plenty of free image on the internet. And if you are not really sure about the copyright, then you just put the source or the citation of where the image you got. So it's very accessible these days for all the image presentation, right? So any other question? There are still people joining in. I think they mistakenly think it's 3 p.m. Jakarta time, so I'm sorry for the confusion. Um, what will you do if suddenly your boss asks you to present something that you probably understand the topic like 30-50%? Okay, so the important thing here is how much time you have left, right, before you have to present. How much time you have left. If you still have enough time, then you try to study it as much as possible. But of course, whenever you present it, you have to always explain in the front that this is not your expertise, right? You try to learn as much as possible within the certain time frame, and this is the best thing that you can do. So always um, deliver that upfront, so your boss maybe don't have over expectation from you. And it's good to be honest, right? It's not your area of expertise, it's something new, but you have given the time, so you do your best. Okay, is there any tips to prevent us from stuttering in front of people? This is very human, very natural. um, I would say this will takes from practice, right? The more you practice, the more you get better. Me myself, I'm come from an introvert background. I have, I was a shy person back then, but because I've been doing this a lot of time, my job it required me to do this a lot of time, and I push myself to exercise, push myself to prepare all the time. So yeah, I can reduce all of the nervousness, even though I still have the butterfly in my stomach whenever I have to present, but it always helps me if I prepare it in advance. All right. So I promised earlier that I would share a personal story again why presentation skill is very important and sometimes is very critical, right? So from my personal experience, my presentation skill have helped me lots of time, right? Presentation skill is something that you like it or not will always be part of your day-to-day job. Doesn't matter you work as a freelance, doesn't matter you are an owner of a company, presentation skill you will always use it. And this particular skill has helped me tremendously. I would like to take a very obvious example. So during 2017, when the oil price crashed, like today, right, 2017, it just happened that my contract with my previous employer, which was Petronas, expired. And of course, for them to continue my contract as an expatriate, it's not easy. So they finished the contract, and at that time I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure, I'm very confident I can have another job. But apparently the market was very, very bad. There is no opening at the time, so I tried to fill my time working on study my master degree. So while I'm continuing my master degree, I tried to look for jobs and everything. And at the end of my master degree, it's only 1 year. I have to I have to present. No, so I have to do a internship, 2 months internship for in a company, right? So I'm asking around whether I can have an internship from a company, and it just happened that a very good friend of mine offer to have an internship with her company. So this company is relatively a small company, which is actually my company right now. Relatively small. At the time, they have no geologists. They were still thinking whether they want to continue their geology product or not. So they was like, okay, you can join then. Just do a 2 months internship. So maybe you can test our technology, test our product. The challenges here is because at that time there is no geologists in the company. They are all either engineers or mathematician or physicists. So it's a little bit disconnected from them. I was a little bit disconnected from them. So I was doing the whole 2 months. I'm testing the product and everything. And at the end of the internship, I have to present to my university, right, to my supervisor, and I have to take one of the local representatives from the company. So at that time, the local manager, I asked him to join for my presentation for my internship. So it's basically like a final project, right? To the university, to my supervisor and other lecturers. Um, that presentation only took about like maybe 1 hour, less than 45 minutes, I think. Right? Basically summarize whatever I've been doing for the last 2 months, right? And after I presented, the lecturer was very impressed. They liked the idea, and I think I got flying colors. But what most importantly is that local manager was so impressed, right? So impressed, and he immediately said, "Arie, after this 2 months internship, can you just join us, right, to the company?" But he was frankly at the time, he was just like, you can join us, but maybe first time on a probation base, because we have to ask approval from the CEO in Moscow and in Houston, which is not easy. And I was like, yeah, sure. I would really love to join, right? So you can see, right, even though he wasn't geologist, he was an engineer, but the way I presented convinced him to, I am the right person. And within that uh, almost 1 year of probation, I have a chance to present on a technology forum where the CEO of my company and the CTO comes all the way from Houston and Moscow, right? And I have to present in front of 150 audience, in front of clients, and of course in front of my own CEO and my own CTO, my own bosses, basically. And at that time, my probation period will end. I think I have a 1 year contract, and it will end maybe in around 1 month or 2 months. And at that time, I don't have certainty whether I'm going to be employed or not. So I was ready, like, okay, if it's not going to be continued, I'm totally okay. But after I delivered the presentation in front of 150 audience, in front of the CEO and everything, on that particular day itself, my boss came to me and said, Arie, we will proceed with your permanent employment starting today. So yes, it has helped me a lot. It has helped me a lot of time, right? The presentation skill. So what I'm saying is my technical skill can take me very far, right? Can take me very far, but my presentation skill can take me anywhere because it can convince can deliver key message to other people that don't have the same background as me. So again, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate all your attendance. 40 people from the start to the end. I really appreciate that, guys. So thank you again very much. If you have questions, feel free to email me. Feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. And also, please like my Facebook page. And thank you very much again. Appreciate it. Have a good afternoon. And for you, those who do fasting, have a nice buka puasa. Thank you, guys. See you guys later. Bye.